The morning I found out, my son-in-law had emptied my bank account. I sat at my kitchen table, looked at the number on my screen, and laughed. Not the kind of laugh you do when something is funny. The kind that comes out when the situation is so far outside what a reasonable person would do that your brain doesn't know what else to offer. My name is Carl Whitfield. I'm 62 years old. I live in Riverside, Ohio, and for 28 years, I worked as a commercial loan officer at a regional bank. Fraud wasn't some abstract concept to me. I reviewed loan files, I spotted irregularities. I sat across the table from people who thought they'd been clever and watched them realize they hadn't. When you spend nearly 3 decades doing that, you stop seeing numbers and start seeing behavior. So when I pulled up my savings account that Sunday morning and saw $1,000 where $135,000 had been on Wednesday, I didn't panic. I clicked into the transaction history. 3 transfers, $50,000 on Thursday, $48,000 on Friday, $36,000 on Saturday morning, all 3 to the same account. Kyle Pruitt, my son-in-law. I set my coffee down and read it again. Then my phone buzzed. Kyle's name on the screen. Hey Carl, his voice was calm, easy even. Listen, I know this looks bad. I had a situation, debts that got out of hand faster than I expected. I needed to move, and I didn't have time to ask first. Your family, I'll pay it back. Every dollar. I didn't say anything right away because while he was talking, I noticed a text from him sitting in my message thread sent about 20 minutes before he called. It read, "Good news. Locked in a buyer for 738 Birchwood, $340,000, closing in 30 days. That's when I laughed. 738 Birchwood Lane is my rental property. My house is at 412 Elm Street, 5 miles away. Kyle had been to Birchwood exactly once, 2 years back, when he drove me over there to collect rent from my tenant, Gloria Tatum. He must have filed it away as Carl's house and never thought about it again. He never knew about the trust. He never knew that 412 Elm Street had been sitting in the Whitfield family trust since my wife Norma passed 4 years ago. Norma set it up herself. She was the one who insisted, actually. She used to say, "Carl, protect what we built." She said it the way people say things when they know they won't always be around to help you do it. I let Kyle finish his sentence. "I appreciate the call," I said. "Enjoy your Sunday." I hung up and sat there for a moment. Then I called Ned Harmon. Ned and I overlapped at the bank for 15 years before he went into forensic accounting. He's the kind of man who sees a balance sheet the way a mechanic looks under a hood. He knows what's supposed to be there, and he knows immediately when it isn't. I told him what happened in about 90 seconds. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Give me 48 hours. That Monday morning, I also called Gloria Tatum at 738 Birchwood. I told her someone had tried to sell her house without my knowledge or permission. I told her the lease was valid, she wasn't going anywhere, and I might need a copy of her rental agreement and possibly a statement down the road. She said whatever I needed, she'd help. That was all she said, and it was enough. At 2 in the afternoon, I drove to Stuart Colby's office on 3rd Street. Stuart handles civil litigation and knows property law the way some people know sports statistics. I laid everything in front of him. The 3 transfers, Kyle's text about Birchwood, the trust documents for Elm Street. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he took his glasses off and set them on the desk. "Carl, this is criminal, grand theft, fraud, forgery. We need a police report and we need to contact the title company today." "I know," I said, "but give me 10 days first." He looked at me. "Why?" "Because I want to know the full picture before we hand it to anyone." He wasn't thrilled about it, but he agreed. What I didn't tell Stuart yet was the gut feeling I'd had since reading that text about Birchwood. Kyle was a residential real estate broker. Not a successful one, but he knew how these transactions worked. A man in that line of work moving $134,000 in 3 days and simultaneously pushing through a fraudulent property sale on a rental with tenants mid-lease didn't do that just because he had gambling debts. That kind of desperation has a shape to it. I'd seen it before, back at the bank. It usually meant there was more underneath. I went home, made dinner. Watched the news, called my friend Lloyd Garner around 8 to talk about nothing in particular, the way we do most evenings. Lloyd's been my closest friend for over 20 years, and he's got the good sense not to pry. I didn't tell him anything that night. I just needed the sound of a normal conversation to keep the anger from taking up too much space. Then I went to bed and started planning. Ned called me back on Tuesday evening. He'd traced all 3 transfers through 2 intermediary accounts before the money landed in a business account registered to something called Lakeview Property Solutions, LLC. The LLC was registered in Ohio under the name of a man named Brent Alderman, a small-time real estate broker who had done a few deals with Kyle about 2 years back. The LLC is a shell, Ned said. It's got a registered agent, a mailing address that's a UPS store in Columbus, and about 4 months of transaction history. Someone's been running money through it. Small amounts, nothing that would trip an automatic flag. Steady and quiet. How much total? I asked. Hard to say without subpoenas. But based on what I can see from publicly accessible filings and the account patterns, I'd estimate somewhere north of $200,000 moved through that entity in the past 18 months. I wrote that number down and sat with it for a minute. The $134,000 from me, I said, that went in and kept moving. Within 36 hours, split 3 ways into 3 different accounts. I can follow it one more layer, but after that I'd need access I don't have. That's enough, I said. Send me everything you've got. The next piece came on day 8. An email from an address I didn't recognize, a Proton Mail account with a name that meant nothing to me. Subject line, you should know what Kyle has been doing. It was Brent Alderman, the real one, not the name on the LLC paperwork. Kyle had approached him 2 years ago with a business proposition, used his name and information to set up Lakeview Property Solutions, and promised him a percentage of whatever moved through the entity. For the first 3 months, Brent got paid, then the payments stopped. Kyle told him the operation was winding down. Brent didn't push back because he knew he was already in something he shouldn't have touched, and pushing back felt riskier than walking away, but he'd kept records. Every document Kyle had sent him, every email, the original LLC registration files, 14 pages of material that laid out the entire structure in Kyle's own words. I forwarded everything to Ned and Stuart that same night. In between all of this, I kept things normal with Kyle. That Wednesday, I had him and Sylvia over for dinner. I made chili, the same pot I've made every fall for 30 years. We sat at the kitchen table and talked about the weather turning cold and whether the Browns had any shot at the playoffs. Kyle ate 2 bowls. He seemed relaxed, easy. He'd called me twice since Sunday, and I'd kept both conversations short and pleasant, told him not to worry, that we'd work something out. He believed it because he'd already decided I was the harmless old widower who wouldn't know how to fight back even if he wanted to. On day 10, I called Kyle and told him I was thinking about listing another property and wanted his input before I talked to an agent. Could he come by Saturday afternoon? He said sure, of course, happy to help. He showed up at 2, sat at the same kitchen table where we'd had chili 3 days earlier. I had 3 documents ready, all legitimate, all straightforward on their face. A notary named Cora Langley sat at the end of the table. I'd called her Friday morning and explained what I needed. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. Kyle signed all 3 documents without reading them carefully. He was in a good mood, making small talk about property values in the neighborhood. The documents established in his own handwriting, witnessed and dated that he understood the nature of the Birchwood transaction and had represented himself as authorized to act on my behalf. Pattern of behavior, documented, legal. When he left, I called Stuart. File everything, I said. 2 days later, Kyle came back. He didn't call first. I heard a car in the driveway around 7 in the evening and looked out to see him getting out alone, moving fast, the way people move when they've just heard something that scared them. I opened the door before he knocked. The title company froze the Birchwood money, he said. He wasn't calm anymore. They're saying there's a fraud investigation. My bank called me this afternoon about suspicious activity. What did you do? Come inside, I said. He didn't want to come inside. He stood in the doorway and told me I was making a mistake, that I was blowing this out of proportion, that families didn't do this to each other. His voice got louder as he went. He told me if I kept pushing, he'd make things difficult. He'd tell people I was losing my memory, that I'd authorized everything, and was confused now after the fact. He said Sylvia would back him up. He said I'd spend the next 3 years in court and come out with nothing. I let him finish. Then I said, Kyle, I've been a loan officer for 28 years. I've sat across the table from people who thought they were the smartest person in the room. You're not the first. You're not the scariest. And you're not going to stand in my doorway and threaten me in my own house. He stared at me. You have 2 options, I said. You can get a good lawyer, or you can get a bad one. Either way, I'd start making calls tonight. He left. I closed the door, stood in my hallway for a moment, and then went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee. My hands were steady. I noticed that specifically. Steady hands after a conversation like that meant I'd done the right thing. I called Stuart and told him what had happened. He said to document it, date and time, and what was said. I did that before I went to bed. The next morning I called Detective Wanda Osei at the Franklin County Financial Crimes Unit. Wanda Osei had been working financial crimes for 9 years. She took my statement on a Tuesday morning, asked clear questions, and didn't waste either of our time. When I finished laying out the full sequence, she set her pen down and said, Mr. Whitfield, the shell company piece is going to pull in additional investigators. This goes beyond what he did to you. I know, I said. That's part of why I waited before filing. She looked at me for a second. Most people in your position would have called us on day one. Most people in my position don't know what forensic account tracing looks like, I said. I wanted to hand you something solid, not just a complaint. She nodded and went back to her notes. Stewart filed simultaneously with the police report. Grand theft, fraud, forgery, and a separate referral on the shell company activity. The title company froze all proceeds from the Birchwood transaction, the full $340,000 before any of it reached Kyle. The buyers, a couple named Adele and Roy Navarro, had put their entire savings into that down payment. When Stewart told me they'd been notified that the sale was fraudulent, I asked for their contact information. I called Roy Navarro that same evening. He answered on the second ring, his voice careful and tired. I told him I was sorry, that his family had been pulled into something that had nothing to do with them, that their money was frozen and protected, and that they weren't going to lose it. Then I told him that my current tenant's lease at 738 Birchwood ran through next June, and that when it ended, if they still wanted the house, I would sell it to them at the same price, $340,000. No markup, no complications. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Mr. Whitfield, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything." I said, "Just hang tight." After I hung up, I sat in the kitchen for a while. The house was quiet the way it gets on weeknights. Norma used to fill that quiet without even trying. She'd be doing something in the next room and the sound of her moving around was enough. 4 years, and I still noticed the absence of it on evenings like this one. I thought about calling Lloyd, but decided against it. Some nights you just sit with things. The following week, I asked Sylvia to come over alone. I'd been putting this off because there was no version of it that wasn't going to hurt. She's my daughter. She's 33 years old and she teaches second grade, and she married a man I had doubts about from the start. Doubts I kept to myself because she was happy and it wasn't my call. Now I had to sit her down at the same kitchen table where Kyle had eaten chili and signed documents and threatened me and show her who her husband actually was. She arrived around 6. I had everything laid out before she knocked, the bank transfer records, Ned's forensic trace of the money through Lakeview Property Solutions, the Brent Alderman documents, Kyle's emails, the LLC registration. I didn't say much. I just put it in front of her and let her read. She read everything twice. She's thorough like that. Always has been. When she looked up, her eyes were dry. Her voice was flat in the way voices get when a person is working hard to hold something together. She said, "How long have you known?" 11 days, I said. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I needed you to see all of it at once, not piece by piece where he could talk around each thing separately." She looked back down at the papers. She didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "Carl, I'm pregnant." I heard the words. It took me a second to arrange them into something I could respond to. 4 months along. Kyle knew. She'd been waiting for what felt like the right moment to tell the rest of the family. She said it quietly, the way you say something when you're not sure whether it's good news or complicated news or both at the same time. I didn't say anything. I looked at my hands on the table. 2 people I hadn't fully accounted for in any of this, Sylvia and whoever was coming next. A child who hadn't asked for any part of what Kyle had said in motion. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and straightened up. "What do I need to do?" "Tell the truth," I said. "That's the whole thing. Just tell the truth." She nodded once. "I'll call Stewart tomorrow." She did. She gave a full voluntary statement. She described what Kyle had told her about my finances, the conversations he'd had with her to build a picture of me as someone who needed help managing money, the way he'd framed borrowing from me as a temporary solution he'd already worked out in his head. She hadn't known the full plan. She hadn't known about the shell company or the Birchwood sale, but she knew enough and she told all of it. That was the moment the case stopped being complicated. Kyle had no version of events left to work with. His wife had walked into a lawyer's office and told the truth, and everything he might have tried to explain away collapsed under the weight of it. The preliminary hearing was set for mid-November. I drove to the courthouse with Stewart on a gray Tuesday morning. Lloyd offered to come. I told him to stay home. Some things you handle in a small group and some things you handle with one lawyer and yourself. Kyle was already seated when we walked in. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 2 weeks, which was probably accurate. When his eyes found mine across the room, I didn't look away. I just sat down and opened my folder. Stewart presented the evidence without dramatics. Bank records. The forensic trace through Lakeview Property Solutions. The forged power of attorney documents. The title company's findings, which included confirmation that the notary seal used on the Birchwood paperwork belonged to a woman whose license had expired 6 weeks before the documents were signed. Wanda Osei testified about the shell company referral. Ned submitted his full forensic report. Judge Helen Rafferty reviewed everything without rushing. She was the kind of judge who reads before she speaks, which I respected. When she finally looked up, she said, "Mr. Pruitt, the evidence here is substantial. Do you understand the charges being brought against you? Kyle's attorney leaned over. Kyle said, "Yes, Your Honor." Before the formal proceedings moved forward, Stewart asked if I could make a statement. The judge nodded. I stood up. I looked at Kyle, not at my notes, not at the judge, at Kyle. "I'm not here because I want to destroy you," I said. "I'm here because my daughter is going to raise a child, and that child deserves to know their father stood up and faced what he did instead of running from it. That's the only outcome I'm asking for." Kyle put his face in his hands. Sylvia, sitting 3 rows back, stared straight ahead. Sentencing came in December. Kyle's attorney had negotiated. Kyle stood and addressed the court himself, which I hadn't expected. He admitted to the transfers. He admitted to the forged documents in the Birchwood transaction. He said he'd been using the shell company to manage gambling debts that had grown beyond anything he could control, and that he'd told himself enough lies along the way that he'd stopped recognizing them as lies. He didn't ask for sympathy. He asked for a chance to be present for his child. Judge Rafferty sentenced him to 18 months in the county facility, 5 years of supervised probation, and full restitution of $135,000 to be paid to me over 10 years. The shell company matter was referred separately to federal investigators. The $340,000 from Birchwood remained frozen pending the outcome of that investigation. Kyle's mother, Peggy Pruitt, sat alone in the gallery. On her way out, she stopped near me and started to say something. I nodded before she found the words. She nodded back and kept walking. Sometimes that's the whole conversation. 14 months later, on a Saturday in August, my backyard was full of people. Lloyd was running the grill the way he always does, slowly and with strong opinions about temperature. He'd asked me almost nothing through all of this, just showed up when I needed company and left when I needed quiet. That's a skill most people never develop, and I don't take it for granted. Ned was there with his wife. Gloria Tatum came by in the afternoon and brought a pie. Adele and Roy Navarro were there with their kids. They'd moved into 738 Birchwood in July, just as I'd promised, at the price we'd agreed on. Their youngest was running laps around the yard with Lloyd's dog, which Lloyd pretended to be annoyed about. Sylvia was sitting in a lawn chair near the garden with a 3-month-old boy on her lap. She'd named him Neil Whitfield. Whitfield, not Pruitt. Her decision, made quietly a few weeks before he was born, and she told me about it on the phone like it was a simple logistical matter she'd sorted out. That's Sylvia. She handles things. I walked over and she lifted Neil up toward me without being asked. I took him and stood there in the August heat, holding a boy who had Sylvia's nose and Norma's forehead. That second thing caught me off guard. I hadn't expected to see Norma in a face that new. I didn't say anything for a while. There wasn't much to say that the moment wasn't already saying on its own. Sylvia looked up at me. "You never stopped," she said. "Even when it was me involved. Especially then," I said. She looked back out at the yard. Neil made a small sound and grabbed at my finger. I let him hold it. Kyle was released after 11 months with good behavior. He was living in Columbus, working a straight job, attending mandated therapy. Sylvia had filed for divorce before Neil was born. They had a custody arrangement, supervised visits for now, with a review scheduled for next spring. I didn't have an opinion about how that would go. That was between the two of them and whatever Kyle managed to become going forward. What I knew was that Neil would have a grandfather who showed up, and that counted for something. Later that evening, after the Navarros left and Lloyd packed up his grill, I sat on the back porch with a beer and watched the light go out of the sky. The yard was quiet. 412 Elm Street, still in the Whitfield family trust, still standing, same as it had been through all of it. Norma used to say the measure of a man isn't what he builds. It's what he refuses to let go of. I think she was right. She usually was. If you're watching this and something in it felt familiar, I want to say something directly to you. You spent your whole life building something. Your savings, your house, your name. Nobody handed you any of it. And if someone in your own family has started treating what you built like it already belongs to them, that is not love. That is not family. Get your documents in order. Know what you own and how it's held. Talk to a lawyer before you need one. The men who took care of everything themselves their whole lives are exactly the ones who end up with no one watching their back. Don't be that man. Protect what you built. Norma was right about that. She was right about most things.